What is up? Thank you for listening to the 157th edition of the MMA Podcast. It is January 29th, 2016. As always, a bunch to break down. UFC 196 basically falling apart. First, Kane drops out. Stipe Miocic replaces him. Now, Fabricio Werdum is out. That whole heavyweight title has been scrapped. The pay-per-view has been scrapped. It's now a fight night card. Also have a few fight announcements to talk about. And, of course, this weekend, we got that big match at 205, Ryan Bader versus Anthony Johnson, UFC Fight Night Newark. Thanks for listening. Let's do it.
You're listening to the MMA Podcast.
That's right, it is the MMA Podcast. Thank you so much for tuning in. If you are listening live, as always, you can call us or tweet us. The phone number is 213-457-3380, or you can tweet at the MMA Podcast. We'll shout your handle out and address whatever you tweet at us, whether it's MMA news or otherwise. That number again, 213-457-3380, or you can Skype us at the MMA Podcast. Tweet us at the MMA Podcast. As always, to my left is from Palm Desert, California, P Money on Twitter at Sweet Pappy Jones. What's going on, man?
Jay, we are chilling this lovely Thursday night over here in Southern California, and you know what? You may know me, many people know me as P Money. Some know me as Sweet Pappy Jones. Some people know me as Mild Cheddar, but tonight you were speaking to Jean-Luc Picard from the SS Get Your Hoe Enterprise. You can look out for my mixtape I'm dropping with my homeboy George Flossington. We'll keep you up to date on the EP and the details on that, but very excited to break down this card we got coming up, Johnson versus Bader here on Big Fox, and to talk the news too, as always, sir.
Yeah, I appreciate you joining me tonight, Jean-Luc. Let's start with what I led the intro out with, UFC 196. Hard times, the entire card basically falling apart. We haven't seen this. I literally can't remember the last time we've seen a announced pay-per-view fight be changed to a fight night. They scrapped the whole pay-per-view event. They're going to do it on Fox Sports 1 now. I believe it's still in Vegas, and it's you know, their big Super Bowl card. First Kane drops out, then Werdum drops out. Now it's headlined by what was originally supposed to be the co-main event, and they aren't even calling it a pay-per-view anymore. My suspicion, and the suspicion of a lot of people, is that they're doing this twofold. They may not have made this move to scrap the pay-per-view, but they've been aiming to get UFC 200 on July 4th weekend, International Fight Week, I think July 9th actually. But with the timing of pay-per-views, they only had 3 that they could do between the Super Bowl card and this summer. This gives them another I guess, card that they can sell on the pay-per-view format, which they'll probably do Memorial Day weekend. But aside from that, man, first Kane drops out, which I guess we'll start there. That's a logical starting point. You know, everything, this whole tower started to collapse when Kane dropped out, which isn't surprising at all. You know, he gets injured so much, and these AKA guys get injured so much, it seems like. And you see videos of Kane, like, there's 2 in particular I saw where he's just doing maximum weight, maximum reps as fast as he can. All the comments are like, you know, like lifters saying this is going to get you injured really quick. What the fuck are you doing? And just, jerking and tearing in like zero form. It's, it's not really a surprise these guys are getting injured. I don't want to mention the trainer's name because I don't, I'm not a weightlifting expert and the guy probably knows more than me. But when you see videos like you do out of the fighters at American Kickboxing Academy, I don't think it's very surprising you see him on the bench so much injured. Pat, what you make of the Cain injury, and if Verdum is able to fight before Cain, do you think that we should wait and make a Cain versus Verdum fight?
I was just reading an article on Junkie the other day, right before this was announced, and Cain Velasquez was sounding really motivated. He wanted to get back what Fabricio took for him, which he felt was his heavyweight championship, and he sounded super motivated, and he wanted that redemption, and I wanted to see him get a shot at that redemption. So it's sad that this injury that, has been a problem throughout his entire heavyweight championship reign, it's sad that it's rearing its head again and preventing him from getting another shot at regaining that championship. But at the same time, and this is kind of why I say that you don't wait around for Cain, it's just that injury has held him up for quite a long time. As soon as he beat Brock Lesnar, he was out for over a year, torn rotator cuff, I believe it was. Then he was out for almost 2 years, waiting for eventually Verdum was his opponent, and we saw how that went down. But so he's lost at least 3 years of his career to injury already. You can't wait around for Cain to bounce back, because he's just, whether he's the champion or whether he's a contender, this has been an issue for him. And Stipe Miocic, he's a guy that stepped up on late notice, and he's got a good case for a shot at the heavyweight division. Heck, I think that if Fabricio heals up in a significantly quicker time than Cain Velasquez, they should go ahead with that matchup or potentially look at other matchups. But unless Cain and Fabricio heal up at like the exact same time, I don't see a reason for that immediate rematch to happen.
And that brings us to Fabricio, who came under a little bit of flack. A lot of people were saying he shouldn't have backed out. Apparently, he had like a toe injury or something, then injured his back, and was, not injured, but said, yeah, I would rather not. It sounded like he did not want to fight Stipe. That's what it seemed like, because we've got this Verdum Stipe match that is the main event for one day, and then Fabricio pulls out. I guess the only real point to get to here is should Stipe get the next title shot? I mean, if Cain is able to come back, which I'm not sure of the nature of Cain's injury, which I should have looked that up before. Let's see, what is Cain's injury?
Cain had a back injury.
Back injury. So I don't know if there's a timetable yet. Okay, it says Fabricio's going to be back in 2 or 3 months. And wait, this is all about Verdum. I'm fucking lost. Any way you cut it, should Cain get the next shot or should Stipe?
Well, again, I feel it really depends on how the injury timetable plays out. But at this point, really, I think maybe Stipe should get the shot no matter what, just because Cain has had this history of injuries. And what if he does go on and beat Verdum in the rematch and say injures himself again? I think he should have at least one get-right fight when he comes back, just because this has been such a problem. Let's see if he can come back, win a fight. And again, the first fight with Verdum was a demolishing. Forget the elevation excuse. That's BS. He was demolished, and he probably should have a tune-up fight anyways coming out of that. So in this case, I think he should have one just to see if he's healthy. Let's get Stipe in there. He's been looking good. Similar skill set to Cain Velasquez, but styles make fights. Stipe, he's a bigger heavyweight than Kane is, at least stature-wise, a little closer to Fabricio in frame, but similar credentials, similar skill sets, the wrestling, the Golden Gloves, and my goodness, Stipe sure did look good with his finish in his last outing. So, yeah, I'd love to see him get in there against Fabricio Werdum, and if Kane can stay healthy, get a W, I say let's get him get a shot after he proves he can win and stay healthy.
And I mean, second to maybe Dominic Cruz, Kane's maybe the most plagued by injuries champion or former champion we've had. I mean, in 2010, torn rotator cuff. 2011, torn meniscus. 2013, torn labrum. 2014, torn meniscus. And now in 2016, he's having sciatic nerve problems, which apparently there's no timetable yet. So I would tend to agree if Kane can get right in the next couple months, which apparently is when Werdum will be able to fight again 2 or 3 months, sure, make the fight. But if you're going to have to wait even another just 2 or 3 months, I say give the title shot to Miocic, because, you said it. All of these injuries just not a good look at all. And like I mentioned, it's now a fight night card, no longer UFC 196. UFC 197, the card with Holm, Tate, McGregor, Dos Anjos, that's now UFC 196, as confusing as that is. But, yeah, that's going to be a fun fight to be at. Moving on to kind of, I don't know how serious it really is as relevant to MMA as it is, but 2 stories coming back. One obviously is. One was talks of GSP maybe coming back. A Quebec radio station reported that he would be making an announcement soon, that he would be pursuing another UFC fight. GSP's press team quickly released a statement saying that was not true and their sources were not reputable. And then we hear Chael Sonnen. Apparently, he's going to be on the next season of Celebrity Apprentice that Arnold Schwarzenegger, of all people, is going to host now that Donald Trump is busy with other ventures. And my question is, between George St. Pierre and Chael Sonnen, I'm giving you an over-under of 0.5 fights in both of their future. So basically, I'm asking you, do you think either guy will fight in the UFC again?
Oh, boy. Well, Chael Sonnen, I would say Chael's doing all right. He seems, especially with the way his ouster from the UFC went, I want to say he had like 4 different banned substances in his blood test or something like that. And he was unapologetic for it, which is definitely one reason why we love and support the American Gangster. Because he said, hey, straight up, this is part of just basically his health regimen and what he needs to do just to keep himself functioning due to his medical condition. So, due to the way things are going, he wasn't going to be able to keep fighting anymore. And I mean, heck, he's on ESPN. He's going to be doing Celebrity Apprentice these days. I think Chael, and especially, he did pretty well with those Anderson Silva fights. Seems like a smart guy. Like he's not going to be, out blowing his cash at the casino or whatever it may be. At least I hope that's not the case. You never know, but seems like he'd have that parlayed into something. So I think he's doing all right financially, and with the drug testing situation, his medical condition, I don't know if it necessarily allows. GSP, I think, is more viable. I mean, we had the Rory slip up not that long ago, Jake, as you were so apt to point out, and now we have this Quebec radio station coming out making this announcement. And again, GSP's team is quick to come out and put the kibosh on that. But very interesting. We've had a couple slip-ups now, and GSP, again, he never officially retired, and he was pretty vocal about the PEDs himself, and maybe the fact that they're doing the testing now would be a something that would entice him to come back to the UFC. So I'm giving GSP. I'm going with the over on GSP. I think he's got over half a fight. Chael, I'm going with the under.
All right, you think? Yeah, I tend to agree there. I think GSP is going to come back. I think he's going to have. Man, it's tough to say. I think he gets. Man, do you think he makes another title run? I mean, is this going to be, Rory sort of seemed to slip in a Q&A recently saying, no, he's not going to try and make a title run. He's just going to take a super fight for a bunch of money, which the super fights, I guess there are a few, a Diaz rematch, a fight against Silva. You're not going to get a super fight if it's him and, Pascal Kraus or someone. You got to get a big name, and if he defeats a big name, then that puts him probably in line for the next title shot because he is who he is. Do you give him a title shot? I mean, shit, who do you give him? We talked about this a few months ago, but the welterweight division is always sort of morphing and changing, and folks going up and down.
Yeah, I mean, it with GSP coming back, that would just really kind of turn things upside down, just with the way things have played out since the GSP has left. I think if he were to come back, and that's the thing, because although, Jake, of course, you and I both agree that Johnny Hendricks did win that fight against GSP, although unfortunately the judges did not agree, but GSP left the sport the champion. He vacated his belt. He never lost. So, I mean, and certainly his status, one of the greatest of all time. That's how he left the game. So, if he wanted to come back and get an immediate title shot, I mean, hey, of course, the UFC could probably market that. Talk about putting GSP. That gives you a couple more big money cards you could potentially do. Start putting him on some double title fight cards, and the numbers would be there. So it could certainly be some big money business. And I could see GSP wanting to do it. I mean, he's probably sitting on the sidelines like, man, here's Robbie Lawler, a guy who was out of the UFC, was about to wash out a strike force. And now he's in here holding the UFC gold that I never lost. Maybe he's sitting on the sidelines getting that itch saying, man, I want to come back and stomp these guys. You know what? I do have a win against Johnny Hendricks. He's the guy that beat Robbie Lawler twice. Man, why am I letting these guys hold on to my belt? Maybe there's a little bit of that going on for GSP. So if he did want to come back and go right for that belt, I think, and especially with what we've seen the UFC been doing lately, I think that would be too sweet for them to deny. If GSP wanted to get that title shot, I don't think that I would necessarily be against it myself. Again, he's been in the sport and in the UFC for so long, and legitimately, whatever you want to say about his style, maybe him not looking so good his last couple fights, even though technically being victorious, he is one of the pound for pound greatest that's ever been. So for him to come back, that'd be huge, and I think he's got the right to essentially Conor McGregor style do just about whatever he wants.
Right now, as it sits this second right now, I think George St. Pierre is the greatest fighter of all time. Silva second, Jones third. I think Jones is only a few more dominant performances away from becoming the GOAT. I think Jones will retire the GOAT. But just looking at who GSP beat over the course of his career, how dominant he was, how he avenged those losses, there I don't think has been anyone like him. And say what you will about GSP, the dude is 100% class, a good face for the sport. Moving on to another big face of MMA, Uriah Faber. Apparently a fight between him and TJ Dillashaw is in the works. We'll talk about what that means for Dominic Cruz next. But Dillashaw Faber, rumor is it's in the works. We'd probably see it this spring or this summer. Dillashaw is obviously going to be the favorite here, the ex-champion. Fighting his former teammate Uriah Faber, who ran that Alpha Male gym. Who apparently we've seen Lance Palmer and Joseph Benavidez recently both make the switch over to Colorado at Elevation MMA. So it seems like it's only maybe Faber and Mendez, and rumors of the gym being up for sale and maybe closing down have been floating around. So Alpha Male is sort of in a weird place. Dillashaw is obviously in a weird place, having lost his belt. Faber's got the experience, but really in breaking down the fight myself, that's about all I give him. I think this is Dillashaw's fight to lose. We were talking rumors. Rumor was Dillashaw would bully Faber around the ring, and if we see the fight, I think that's what we end up seeing in a fight between the two ex-teammates, the master and student. P Money, a.k.a. Jean-Luc, who you got? TJ Dillashaw, Uriah Faber, if it goes down.
My goodness. I don't think I've legitimately ever sat and really analyzed this one. I mean, TJ Dillashaw seems to have been putting in work against the kind of fighter that Uriah Faber is. He's been beating up the guys that he's got the height and reach advantage on, doing well against wrestlers, against strikers. I mean, he's been doing phenomenal against everybody. Even though I do think Dominic Cruz beat him rounds 1 through 3 in their most recent fight, he did exceptional in that fight as well. Those rounds 1 through 3 were close, and rounds 4 and 5 were definitely his. So he's top tier, top class in the bantamweight division. My goodness, but Uriah Faber, he's a guy you can never count out either. And he's looked better himself. He's a guy that he's been in the sport for so long. Jake, I know we both watched him since back in the day, and he just continues to improve. The wrestling has always been he's had some great grappling, and his striking just keeps coming along. He always had great striking. You look back at the rematch he had with Matt Brown, his second fight with Matt Brown, although he lost that fight, but I want to say he broke both his hands in that fight.
Mike Brown?
He was, Matt Brown. Mike Brown. Back when Mike Brown was the WEC 145-pound champ, he's taken that MTB. He had taken that from Uriah Faber, and Uriah Faber, I want to say, broke both of his hands in the rematch, and was just throwing great elbow combinations. I mean, he hung in this fight crazy good for someone who had 2 broken hands. It was insane. It was a close fight. So he's always been really creative with the striking, keeps getting better. My goodness, I think I'd probably have to go with, you know what, I'm going with Uriah. I'm rooting with Uriah. I'm going to get on that train. And I was this close to saying Dillashaw, Jake, but I'm not going to say it. I'm going to say Uriah Faber. I'm going to will it into the universe. If this matchup happens, I'm riding with Uriah.
And Dillashaw fighting Faber would obviously open up Cruz for a fight at somebody against 135. And I'm hearing rumors about next fight with Cruz, and it's not a bantamweight.
If it's not a bantamweight, who would it be?
It would be Demetrius Johnson. That's what the rumor has. Dana and Lorenzo want to crack that $1 billion in 2016. They're going after all the super fights. They are cashing in. And apparently the UFC is looking at the possibility of making a fight between Dominic Cruz and Mighty Mouse. The first time in, I guess we determined it was 9 years or 7 years that two champions would be fighting one another in Conor McGregor and Rafael dos Anjos. We might see lightning strike twice. We might see Dominick Cruz and Mighty Mouse down the pipe. And I'll ask you the same question. Who you got? I think I might have an unpopular opinion here, but I'll throw it to you first. Who do you have with the bantamweight and flyweight champ if they do square off?
Jake, I mean, I have to go with Dominic in this one. He has come back looking like he really hasn't lost a step. He's shaking off those injuries, though. That's the only thing. Now, it seems like I think the reports were, a few weeks, maybe I forget, 4 to 10 weeks, somewhere in that range, maybe 8 to 10, more like no surgery needed, just to heal up, get the foot back to 100%. As Dominick Cruz himself said, he's a master of rehabbing injuries, and this doesn't seem to be a bad one. It seems to be something he'll be able to work through fairly quickly and get back into even better fighting shape, I hope, and further getting back into his groove. And we saw what Dominick Cruz did to Demetrious Johnson when he was in that championship group. He was suplexing Mighty Mouse across the ring. Now, granted, Mighty Mouse, champion himself. I mean, he was never a champion, to my recollection, until he went down to the UFC flyweight division. He's been their first and only champion there, and foreseeably, he's going to be their only champion for a long time until he hangs it up. But as good as he is, Dominick Cruz, I think he's just so tall. His movement is so good. As fast as Demetrious Johnson is, and as skilled as Demetrious Johnson is, Dominick Cruz, he also is a pound-for-pound champion. He's a pound-for-pound skilled, and just the height and reach advantage that he enjoys, he'll be able to work that advantage against Demetrious Johnson all night long, I feel like. He won't be there for Demetrious. As quick as Demetrious is, Dominick Cruz is very quick for a 135-pounder, and I think this fight will play out. If it does materialize, which would be a great fight, love to see this fight played out again. Why not? But I think it would be another dominating performance from Dominick Cruz.
Yeah, and both guys' records are so amazing. You have Cruz, who he's lost to Faber once. That's it. He's like 21-1. Johnson is 23-2. One of his only 2 losses to Dominick Cruz. But as the story goes on Demetrious Johnson, the guy apparently was training like part-time up until he lost to Dominick Cruz, and after that, his coach, Matt Hume, said, you got to make a choice. You either got to stop now or you have to start doing this full time, because you can't just go into this part time and, have fights like you did against Dom Cruz. That'll wear on your health. And Mighty Mouse decided to start training full time. And that was that. I might have an unpopular opinion. I don't just think I don't just think Demetrious Johnson wins this fight. I think he wins it dominantly. I think he knows that the strength is probably in Cruz's favor. Knows that clinching up Cruz offers him problems. I think Johnson just, he's fighting a guy in Cruz who has excellent footwork, but the strides Johnson has taken in the time since 2011, since 2011, a lot's happened. That 2011 October 1st fight between Cruz and Johnson that Cruz won pretty easily. Since then, Dominick Cruz has fought twice. Demetrious Johnson has fought 10 times and become an 8-time champion at flyweight. Had a draw and then 9 straight wins. He's beaten everyone that has been put in his path. And I think even though Cruz has not dropped off, I don't think ring rust is an issue. I think he's still the champ, the same champ he was. But Mighty Mouse has just made giant strides. I see a 49-46 fight. I see Johnson just outworking Cruz. And it might be an unpopular opinion. I think Cruz might be a little bit of a favorite just because he's the bigger champion. But I have Johnson winning a dominant fight.
Goodness.
Not to hate on Cruz, because Cruz is really probably one of my top 10 favorite fighters. But, I think Cruz beats everyone at bantamweight. I just think Mighty Mouse Johnson is pound for pound the best fighter in the world right now. You put that skill set up at the same weight as anyone. I think if you could make a 205 Mighty Mouse, he'd beat John Jones. I really do think Johnson's one of the best talents we've ever seen. And it's sad because as a flyweight, we don't even think of him in we think of him in the pound for pound king discussion, but not really the GOAT discussion. And I wonder what he's going to have to do at 125 to get in, the chat with GSP, Silva, Jones, all them. One more fight announcement before we get to Bader versus Johnson. A lightweight fight, and it's going to be for number one contender after Conor versus RDA. We were talking about the possibility of Khabib versus Nate Diaz, which I still think they should have done, but I guess it makes sense to make Khabib Nurmagomedov and Tony Ferguson. Winner gets a title shot at lightweight. Do you think these guys are deserving? Nurmagomedov has been out for a while. Ferguson, I think, is pretty obviously deserving of this, having won a ton of his recent fights by impressive finish. But who are you leaning toward, Khabib versus Tony Ferguson?
Man, this is such a crazy fight. And if you would have asked me this right as Khabib had just gotten injured when he was riding what's he on the 6-fight win streak, 22-0 overall. When he was just putting that win streak together, I probably would have said Khabib fairly easily, or Khabib, I'm sorry. But nowadays, my goodness, with the tear Tony Ferguson has been on, he's just been dismantling people in quite a brutal fashion. And speaking of fighters that have just been improving, Tony just really seems to be putting everything together. I mean, it seemed he was like a power striker first more than anything coming out of the Ultimate Fighter, but just has finessed that game so much, his grappling, his striking. He's really, my goodness, he's on some next level stuff right now, I dare say. Tony Ferguson is coming well along. It's just the question of the grappling. The grappling, will Tony Ferguson be crafty enough to negotiate that grappling? Now, this is a 5-round match, at least. This is official. This is an official 5-rounder, so there's going to be a lot of time to deal with this grappling, or perhaps be subjected to it and ground into the mat. This is such an interesting fight to call, and Khabib's been out for so long. I hate to go against the wrestling, but man, you know what? I'm going to go with El Cucuy in this one. Probably shouldn't go against that savage wrestling of Khabib, but I just think with Tony Ferguson, the level of activity he's been able to maintain. He's 10-1 in the UFC, if I'm not mistaken, and has just been handling people so thoroughly. I think I'm going to have to give him the slight edge, if for nothing else, just due to momentum and the violence he's been able to produce.
Yeah, we all think of Khabib as this killer and the best lightweight. I think he might be, but you look at his record, and yes, he's never lost a fight. He's 22-0. But who's he beat aside from Rafael dos Anjos? And that was nearly 2 years ago, his last fight. Ferguson has been a lot more active. I think Khabib will be the favorite here. The guy's just looked so dominant in his grappling and the way he seems to seamlessly bring him down and trap him on the mat. But Tony Ferguson is crafty. He's way craftier on the ground than anyone Khabib has fought. So he's got to be very careful there. I think it's a close fight. I think it's a split decision, but I think just just to play devil's advocate, I'm gonna take the safe bet in Khabib, but I mean Tony. I mean this will be close odds. You know, Tony has a lot of tools and a lot of abilities he has to be able to finish the fight. And I believe that brings us to the UFC on Fox card this Saturday night in Newark, New Jersey. As always, we'll start with the prelims. A few fights standing out to me. I don't know if you have the card up as well. And if you do want to call in, the number is always 213-457-3380, or you can Skype us at the MMA Podcast. A few fights floating around. One of the fights on the UFC Fight Pass card, Matt Dwyer versus Randy Brown. Randy Brown 6-0, one of Yao's teammates actually over at Henzo's in NYC. Randy Rude Boy Brown, Alex Caceres, a favorite against Masio Fullen. You got Kevin Casey versus Rafael Natal, which should be a fun fight, but Kevin's gas tank has just been so questionable. I really think as the fight goes on, you know, Casey's for sure got a better chance of ending it early, but the later the fight goes, the more that it'll probably, the scales will tip to Rafael Natal. Olivier Aubin-Mercier, a big favorite, the Canadian grappler, should win his fight over Diego Ferreira. And the main event of the Fox Sports 1 prelims, Tarek Saffiedine versus Jake Ellenberger. Tarek, rightfully so, a big favorite here. Jake Ellenberger's offense the last few years has just been non-existent, and Tarek is very crafty. The only guys he's lost to going back to 2009 are Tyron Woodley and Rory McDonald. I think he's got this W pretty easy against Jake Ellenberger. And I guess we'll wait until we get to the main card. What do you think of the prelims?
I'm pretty pleased for the prelims. I think there's some decent fights on here. For me, definitely standing out, Dustin Ortiz versus Wilson Hayes. Really like Dustin Ortiz. He's definitely, in my opinion, top 5 flyweight division. I don't know what his official rank is right now, but Wilson Hayes, also a solid competitor, came over from Bellator some time ago now. He's had many fights under the UFC at this point, but he's definitely another guy that has really brought his striking game along and seems to be doing real good in the UFC these days. I wasn't quite sure what his chances would be, especially he was fighting he was fighting in bantamweight. I wasn't sure how he would hold up going down to 125, but Wilson Hayes seems to be doing good these days, and Dustin Ortiz is a top prospect, and I think these guys certainly, the winner in this case, definitely put some good momentum on their side, and definitely will help to make a case for an eventual championship run. So looking forward to that flyweight action. Definitely Tarek Saffiedine versus Jake Ellenberger should be a good scrap. I'm favoring Tarek in there. Just for some reason, I don't know if my boy Jake has a whole lot in the gas tank these days. Not like my boy 20 Wing Walters. He can go all day. Jake Ellenberger, not so much. Man, he's a solid fighter all the way around, but I just wonder if some of those wars have caught up to him. Tarek's a real crafty striker and a crafty fighter overall. I think he has what it takes to get it done in this one. Alex Caceres at featherweight, no matter what you think about old Bruce Leroy, he always puts on an interesting scrap, so it'll be good to see him take on Masio Fullen. And yeah, not too familiar with the Fight Pass fighters. 3 of the 6 of them don't even have Wikipedias, but should be a solid lineup of preliminary cards for the UFC on Fox card.
And that brings us to the main card, which will break everything down, but the main event. Sage Northcutt versus Brian Barberena. This seems like them feeding a bum to Sage Northcutt that no one's heard of before. He is moving up a weight class to 170, and he hasn't made clear whether he'll be staying up there or moving back down to 155. He was going to fight at 155, but just about a week ago, his opponent pulled out of the fight, replaced by a welterweight, so Sage will be moving up. Bantamweight fight between Yuri Alcantara and Jimmy Rivera. Man, Yuri is a dangerous striker, but it seems like his weakness has been his greatest offense in that he throws himself out there, puts himself in the pocket too much, leaves himself open for too much counter offense. And I think Jimmy Rivera in his third UFC fight will stay undefeated in the UFC, land that counter offense to beat the Brazilian. In the co-main event, which, man, this is such a fun fight. Josh Barnett against Ben Rothwell. Two guys who, man, as of late, they have been putting on some shows. Both of them 3-1 in their last 4. You have Ben Rothwell. He lost to Gabe Gonzaga about 3 years ago. Since then, wins against Brandon Vera, Alistair Overeem, Matt Mitrione, all finishes. Josh Barnett finished Nandor Gelmino 3 years ago on the same card, I believe. Nope, it wasn't. He landed that brutal knee to Frank Mir at UFC 164. Got the first round win. Lost via KO to Travis Brown, and then defeated Roy Nelson last September in Satayama, Japan. Man, I really have no idea who to pick here. Rothwell probably throws a little harder. Barnett probably has a bigger toolbox of weapons to use against Rothwell. I don't know. I think Ben would want to keep this standing up, and I think he probably has the defensive wrestling to keep it standing up. I don't think Josh would be able to get Ben to the ground where Josh would have the advantage. But at the same time, standing up, I think if we're talking a boxing or a kickboxing match between the two guys, I see Barnett maybe having a little bit better footwork, maybe being able to work from the outside, work some leg kicks, sort of throw in, throw in some long jabs to kind of try and keep Rothwell at bay. And as much as he tried, man, yeah, I'm seeing either a Barnett decision or a Rothwell finish, and I'll go ahead and take Barnett. I'll say a decision, but if he lets Rothwell in, it's night for the War Master.
Yeah, Rothwell has been showing some heavy leather these days. He had that TKO over Alistair Overeem, just a shocker. I would never, ever have predicted that ever happening. But Rothwell has turned it around. He's got 3 wins in a row. Although, I must say, one of those wins, the win over Brandon Vera, was at UFC 164 2013. Rothwell tested positive for elevated testosterone levels. This was in, shockingly, Wisconsin. Where's Ben Rothwell from? Wisconsin. He was warned by the Athletic Commission. They did not suspend him. They did not overturn his win. It's still a win on his record. Pardon me. The UFC suspended him for, I believe it was 9 months.
That might really be the only example I can think of where a guy failed a test for the juice and got to keep his W. Like, what?
Yeah, so kind of just throwing that out there. That did happen. And so, I don't know. I'm just saying, we got the USADA testing these days. Josh Barnett, of course, we can look at his record, too, and see what his standard of pissing hot is. So these guys are both coming in under the USADA watchful eye. And I think that's really going to be an X factor in this fight. But I think I have to take Josh Barnett in this just because Barnett has been consistently more of a top-tier heavyweight over his career than Ben Rothwell. I think Josh Barnett, he's got such a solid grappling game. We did see Ben Rothwell, as you said, he did get submitted by Gabriel Gonzaga a little bit over 3 years ago, but not that long ago, just 4 fights ago in the fight game. So we're talking about a guy in Josh Barnett, very crafty, good with the wrestling, good with the submission grappling. And he does have what it takes to at least hang on the feet, stay in the pocket. I mean, heck, we saw him go 5 rounds with Daniel Cormier, eating the best shots that he had. That's a guy with some heavy hands as well. Barnett can certainly take a shot, and I think that will serve him well here. I mean, Rothwell, as improved as he is, still I think the Alistair Overeem TKO was perhaps a lot of cockiness on Overeem's point. I don't know. Maybe I'm just selling Ben Rothwell short here, but I don't think that Josh Barnett is going to get cocky on the feet at any point. And I think he's going to fight a smart game plan here. And I could see Josh Barnett potentially getting a sub himself. So I'm going with the War Master as well, and I think he will get the submission over Big Ben Rothwell.
You think it hits the mat, and we see Josh Barnett take the sub. That brings us to our main event, Anthony Johnson taking on Ryan Bader. God damn, this is going to be fun. You got Johnson, the hardest hitter at 205, versus Bader, who's on a 5-fight win streak, and the guys he's beaten are all legit. OSP, Phil Davis, Rashad Evans. I think this is all about the first and second round. I think Anthony Johnson has a 10-minute window to finish the fight, and if he doesn't, Ryan Bader will win a decision. This is going to be a 5-round fight. Will Bader open himself up for that left or that right, because Johnson can land either, and put Bader out? Bader, got his last I think all of his losses have come from getting rocked. I think Jones rocked him, then got the guillotine. Tito rocked him, got the guillotine. Lyoto Machida knocked him out, then Glover got the TKO. Bader leaves himself out there, and the guys he's fought really haven't been knockout artists. Phil Davis, Rashad Evans. Johnson is, and Johnson I don't think is going to have to respect Bader like a lot of his prior opponents. Isn't going to fear that power punching. Bader's going to be fearing Johnson, and if I'm picking a Rumble first round KO, as are a lot of people. But if Ryan Bader can survive for 10 minutes, if he can make it to the end of that second round, I think he wins. We've seen Johnson's gas tank go out quickly. Bader has a great gas tank, has great wrestling, and if that bell rings at round 3, it's a whole different fight, and Bader can probably wrestle fuck him for 3 rounds and win the fight. But he's got to survive those 10 minutes, and that is going to be a very daunting task. What do you think about this main event before we wrap it up, P-Money?
Jake, I think this one is a killer, as was your analysis of this fight, sir. Very spot on. I think Anthony Johnson, he's the odds-on favorite to win this fight, and with good reason. He is just a beast. He is taking out people in such emphatic fashion. He is deadly with his strikes, both his punches and his kicks. He does have a good grappling background. It's really, as you alluded to, that gas tank. And even the grappling background, some of it, it's such a crapshoot. I mean, we've seen him dominate guys like Phil Davis, but at the same time get submitted by Vitor Belfort, who's a 185-pounder. Could have been due to weight cut issues, but that was some time ago. Anyhow, Anthony Johnson, though, he is just such a beast at 205 pounds. The question, as you said, can Ryan Bader survive the first round or two with Anthony Johnson? And honestly, I don't know that he can, just because Johnson is going to come out with a furious pace, I believe, and he's probably just going to look to unload, because he knows that Bader has a chin that can be touched, and Bader he's been winning fights, all by decision though, and he's been just grinding his opponents out. That's been all of his wins, which, to his credit, that's what mixed martial arts is all about. you find an avenue to win, and he's doing it. And it's not for lack of trying. I mean, heck, the fight with Anthony Perosh, he beat the piss out of Perosh. That's probably one of the reasons he's retired now is because of that fight. I mean, he just put such cumulative damage on him. He's been doing a good job taking these guys down and just punching them in the face repeatedly and getting solid W's. But is he going to fire that right? Because he does have a big right hand. He's got some powerful hands, but you know, since the Glover Teixeira fight, when he had Glover rocks, but he got sloppy and he got caught, he hasn't been letting those hands go as much. So is he going to try and fire a big right hand counter when Anthony Johnson is rushing him? You know, what's he going to do if Anthony Johnson is coming in throwing those shots and Bader goes in for a takedown and Johnson just shrugs him off? Is he going to be that keen to stand in the pocket? How long is he going to be able to stand in the pocket with him? I don't know. I'm thinking Johnson's going to get an early finish in this one as well. More likely than not the first round. Bader certainly a live dog in this fight. I mean, if he can fight smart, if his footwork is on point, he does have superior wrestling credentials. That's for sure. His acumen, at least on paper, in collegiate, is superior to what Anthony Johnson has done. But will he be able to make that translate? He does seemingly have the formula that is Anthony Johnson's kryptonite, but I think Johnson will just have a little bit more and that power and that violence that he brings into the cage. I think it'll just be too much for Bader. So I'm riding with you, Jake. I'm going for a first-round knockout with Anthony Johnson.
Ooh, and we hope you have a good time watching the fight. Stay safe if you're drinking. Stay off the roads. Thanks for tuning into the podcast. Jean-Luc, you got anything for him before we sign off?
You know what? You just got to follow your boy, Sweep Happy Jones. Your boy Jean-Luc Picard. Doing things as always with Jake. Love chopping up the game. Follow the whole MMA podcast family. You know who it is. Jake, I'll let you give the shout-outs. Always a pleasure, brother.
As always, the Ant and Jimmy Show, Coach Jamie Huey. You gotta go and listen to the Filthy FRB Show, the T-Row and Funky Show. Follow the Jew, Ross Finkelstein. Shout out to the Mims. Shout out to Jean-Luc Pimphard. Shout out to our boy George, one UFC fan, the Mad Samurai. Who else? Our boy Josh Sanchez, working it up over at campussports.net at JN Sanchez. Follow our boy Diz on Twitter, a solid follow at Talk MMA. Very easy to remember. Our boy Jason is Suxor, always retweeting the links. Really, I've said it a bunch of times, but if you want to learn about the world of amateur wrestling, Ben Askren's new show, the T-Row and Funky Show, is a legitimately good listen. They talk about lots of bullshit, just like we talk about lots of bullshit, and we'll be back next week to break down the fights, preview what was once UFC 196 is now UFC Fight Night. Hendricks versus Thompson. Have a good one. Until then, we got
up, Jake. Tune into the MMA podcast every Tuesday night.
Act the wild style, always been a foul child. Realize, sucker, I be the coming like Noah.
The MMA podcast, Jake is the host. And since Ramsey's been in the wheelchair, the Ant Jimmy Show has been on the road. I wanna say John Jones is a host, so I think that I'll pick up the phone and dial 213-457-3380. We got hot takes on the stove. You get blood on your clothes if you're sitting in the front row. I throw on my gi and then I lace the hoops. I'll have Yao lying down cause he ain't the truth. And if Allen wasn't a cop, I'd mention you. And shout out to Ross Finkelstein the Jew. Cause according to you, you're an MMA guru. A Rube Bisbing lost his hands, Count Dooku. If you're a fancy boy, you get a 2-minute slot. Mystery wants a title shot. So listen to the MMA podcast. Throw a high kick, but I block that. Call me T-Ass, screaming George, where you at? I want the strap. But you know that I'll never tap. So listen to the MMA podcast. Throw a high kick, but I block that. Call me Diaz, screaming George, where you at? I want the strap. And you know that I won't tap. Mystery. The MMA podcast. Most of us just live and breathe this fighting shit.
Shout out to Jake. What? Shout out to Jake. Like a doctor.
Stay black.